All right. Well, happy Tuesday, everyone. Good. Hey, so today, lots to go through. So let's quickly have a look at our agenda. So NZ Stats have just come out with a work in place summary for the last quarter of 2021. So let's have a look at that. We've also got a BRANZ forecast for us. So that's their take on the next 10 years. So we're going to find out whether or not they think it's reasonable to predict over 300,000 new residential dwellings in that period of time. I've also done some research around capacity. So it's not complete. I just want to give you a sense of what I'm looking at in terms of how many dwellings can we actually build at the moment. So obviously there's high consent numbers, what's actually getting completed. And finally, talked about it for a few weeks. We actually are launching a new program around presentation training. So in particular, digital presentations are going to be with us for some time. So how can we become very good at it and actually think about the effectiveness in trying to get follow-ups and project opportunities with architects? All right. So let's firstly just have a look at a recap on the current level of building work. So Stats NZ gave us this graph 2 weeks ago. It was released at the beginning of 8th of March. So here it's useful just to think about the level of residential work that has been recorded alongside building consent applications over the last 15 years. Obviously, we can see some bumps here. We know what they relate to with COVID, but certainly, when we're thinking about the current state and busyness of the industry, there's a good graph for us to look at, where we've got to, and we compare back to this low back down here when we were averaging, I think we got down to just over 12,000 building consents compared to 48,000. Again, this is consent value. We can see just how much the industry has actually grown in terms of the consents that we're processing. These are the different regions. But I mean, the main focus here is really just thinking about from December 2017, the last 4 years, and going from $2 to $3 billion worth of value, just a remarkable shift in, the creation of projects. Remember, these are just consented, not completed. But again, the trend there is just clear and obviously at scale. All right, so looking at fastest growing regions, the smaller towns, so we're thinking of Tauranga, Hamilton, Palmerston North, New Plymouth, all of those are adding up to, a significant amount. So $1.5 billion worth consent value in the last 12 months, up over a third compared to 2020. We can also see the other fastest growing regions are Wellington. It's well documented how well that region is doing, and also Christchurch continuing to be a very strong performer. And then when we look at the other regions, Auckland obviously continuing to grow, just over 10%. Same with the Waikato and the rest of the South Island outside of Canterbury. So on average, we've got 19% growth year on year, and we've now got a total value of residential construction consent value of $5.6 billion. All right, we start looking at commercial work. Now, I really like this split across the main sectors. Here, we've actually got Stats NZ giving us a quarter-on-quarter report. As of February, we now know we've got $3 billion sectors in education, industrial, and also storage. And you can see the strong results in the last quarter for the three of them. What we are expecting is that, and we'll have a look at the BRANZ forecast, that office and accommodation will come back after 2023. And that'll be joined by retail as well. But again, if we're looking at the split here, we've still got very strong performance across these main 6 categories in that last quarter. Look, I understand this has had a few anomalies due to COVID, but again, I think we can safely say there's some good trend lines there for us to look at. I'll take any questions along the way here or any comments. What have we got? Oh, we love the KFC. Yeah, thanks, Dan. Appreciate that. So any comments or questions, just let me know as we form. Just use the chat function. All right. So if we're looking at the fastest growing sectors, e-commerce and obviously the supply chain issues have really been adding fuel to the growth in the industrial market. So factories and warehouses up 68% over the last 12 months to nearly 400 million consent value. Education, 400 million, 27% just for the last quarter. So we're actually seeing that now, continually sitting at that 1.5 billion for the 12-month value as the largest sector. And then just closing out, we've got storage up 15% and office and admin down slightly to just under 300 million. So look, it's a broad spectrum across those various sectors, all with decent amounts of work. But obviously there's some particular categories there we should be thinking of when we're positioning our solutions and dealing with, the architectural practices that are aligned with these high growth commercial sectors. So just adding that up, remember residential consent value, 5.6. We've got $2.5 billion worth of commercial construction. So for the quarter, we're over $8 billion, which is a significant amount of work. Let's get into what our friends at BRANZ have looked at and have reported on. So let's just start with new residential dwelling consents. So here we can see our actual calendar numbers for 2020 and 21. 22, we can actually see that we've got a peak, and then we've got a slow decline, and then you can see this sort of resting at around the 25 to 26,500 residential consents. So just bear in mind that when we had the GFC in 2012, we got down to just over 12,000 residential consents. So in comparison, still got a very healthy outlook. In terms of short term, BRANZ's comments are that there's some short term uncertainties, obviously things that we're well aware of, both with the European settling with Ukraine and thinking about inflation. But as we sort of get out into the midterm, BRANZ's comments, they're getting a lot more confident. And in fact, there's a level of comfort that there's a $300,000 consent total over the next 10 years. So certainly that's going to be driven in terms of how aggressive we get with immigration, and also land prices are something that BRANZ are looking at, just referencing my notes here. So there's uncertainty around the timing, but that midterm view certainly is something that they are comfortable with us settling back down to, that mid 20,000 residential consent mark. Don't have any information around the breakdown, so apartments, townhouses, or detached. Covered that off a few months ago. We can relook at that in the future. But certainly we saw townhouses sort of peaking in sort of 22, 23, and then coming back down, really just driven by the overall decline in consents. But we can touch on that in a later date. I was expecting some comments on that, but no, you're all behaving well. So we'll move on. Let's just think about now the value of these consents. All right. So you can see this year we've got a residential consent valued around 15 billion, and so this is per annum, and we can see that slowly declining. And we've got this sort of settling down here at around the $8 to $9 billion. There is a significant drop off here, but again, it comes down to capacity. And I think what I reference here is that when we look at the number of actual dwelling consents, I don't think there's anyone that believes that we're actually building this number of residential dwellings. In fact, the research I'm doing would suggest that we're more along the lines of 27 to 30,000 dwellings that are actually being completed. That's our kind of delivery, our capacity in the residential construction. And so when we start looking at value, this is the sort of level around that sort of 8,500 to 9,000 that really sort of looks at the $25,000 to $26,000, $25,000 to $26,000 building consent value. For me, some of this actually makes sense. We've got this this capacity here that's been consented, and we could have a discussion around what percentage we actually think is actually destined to go through as actual projects versus those that could be in concept stages looking for on sale or added value to land. But from my mind, I've actually seen this as there's no huge disaster coming from what we're seeing in these figures here. We've just got that slow decline and that settling period at a level that the industry should still actually be quite busy. Okay, Alan, do these numbers include consents for renovations? Well, that's a lovely segue into my next slide. So let me come to that. And Mark, do you think the terraced house market will peak during 22? A lot of projects were developed for property investors. Yeah, look, Mark, as I mentioned before, I think that we are expecting a peak in 22, 23, and then we see that decline, both I think in terms of the acceptance of that effective product as opposed to detached or apartments. I think the national policy statement, which is driving our main centres to, 6 to 8 stories within 15 minutes walking distance of a CBD or 10 minutes of those centre nodes like Newmarket here in Auckland. So there will be some pressure on those townhouses, and also think performance has got to play a part as well. So we all know of some poor performing townhouses that have been developed in recent years that will be turning people off that form. Alan, often terraced townhouses are done on one consent. Yeah, actually, Alan, there may well be one consent, but there'll actually be a number of dwellings that are related to that consent. So we're actually looking at dwelling numbers here rather than consent numbers. My apologies if I didn't make that clear beforehand. Let's now look at our commercial sector, so non-residential. What do the numbers look like here? So again, compared to our residential numbers, we've got a lot more stability here. Again, we've got this peak around $7 billion this year, and we can really see that that's, over the next 4 or 5 years, we've got a slight dip back to high sixes. So we've got some more stability in here. As I mentioned, we expect some of the numbers here to be addressed by growth back into our retail and accommodation sectors. Although certainly with the America's Cup going to Barcelona, that could put a dent in some of the hoteliers' plans for Auckland. But we've got a lot more sort of certainty, stability here. Question around capacity. I don't have any figures on the commercial market, but obviously the hotter the residential market is, the more pressure there is certainly on light commercial. All right, Alan, here's our A&A. So alterations and additions. Right, so here we go. So previous 2 years, we're sitting at between 1.7 and $2.2 billion worth. Now this is consented value. Just a couple of reminders. Remember in August 2020, there was an exemption that came through for minor dwellings that were less than 10 metres, 10 square metres, or those up to 30 square metres which had no plumbing. So that's taken probably about 10 to 15% of consent value out of the market. And obviously a lot of A&A work is non-consented. So the guesstimate is that we can probably put another 2 to 3 times the value of non-consented A&A work which would start to take us up to $4 to $6 billion worth at our 2022 level of work, which will probably explain why we're feeling such heat in that market. You know, it's almost getting to the same levels as our total commercial market. Here is our commercial buildings that we looked at and our total building consent value. So these are all projects including residential new builds, residential A&A, alterations and additions, and commercial consent value. So we can see that as an industry, we're topping out here at just under 24 billion, and then we're dropping back down and settling at around that sort of 17 to 16 and a half. So, you know, roughly a third of that consent value is sort of the decrease we should expect. But again, caveat, just how much of these are actually being built at the moment, I think is a big question for us if we are considering what's the real impact going to be once we start getting to these numbers in 2025, 26 and 27. So, been thinking about what's the actual industry capacity. So, how many houses can we actually build? And what I've come up with here is been looking at the number of new electrical connections year on year, and I've linked that to new dwelling consents. So these are residential connections which cover apartments, townhouses, and detached housing. It's not a strong trend, but I'm starting to see a trend here. The logic here is that obviously when we complete a new house, it actually needs to be connected to the grid. And that's actually then recorded by the EMI and obviously split up in the wholesale market and our various electrical retailers. When we actually look at some averaging from 2017 through to end of last year, we start to see sort of an increase. And, you know, I'd like to sort of get, or I suppose, put some suggestions out and get any feedback and how we feel about the industry being able to deliver, a few years ago, 21,000 residential dwellings. And then as we've sort of increased capacity with the increase in demand over the last 4 years, I'm not sure what's actually happened here. Yep, sure, we've had COVID and we've obviously had some delays in construction, but this has been a huge increase. If we look at the averaging over these last 2 years, roughly looking at around 2,500 new dwellings per month, which gets us to roughly 30,000 new residential dwellings per year. So I put it to you that since 2017, we were looking at around 20,000 new dwellings, and we're now looking at around 30,000 new dwellings. So an increase of around 2,500 new dwellings in capacity per year. So if that's the case, then anything above 30,000, we just can't build. So when we think about the delta between that 30,000 cap and our number last year, which is at 48,000 in terms of consented dwellings, my view is that we're obviously going to have a long tail as we sort of come out of this, as we start seeing forward consents stabilize and start to decline. We've got a tail of existing consents which have been either delayed or for whatever reason, that they'll still be coming through at a later date. So that's going to soften what looks like quite a soft landing anyway when we've just looked at the BRANZ forecast. Look, you could probably drive a bus through some of those assumptions, but I'm really interested in thinking about what are the data sets that we can actually pull together to again give us some certainty around how quickly the market's going to change and how long do we think this high workload is going to exist for. So I'm interested in any feedback that you've got that would either support or refute some of these estimates or assumptions. Yep, happy to get your feedback on that. So in summary, we all know record levels of work. What we're seeing through the forecast we've looked at today, we've got this period of stabilization and then a resettling at that sort of mid to upper 20,000 residential consents, and that commercial construction at around that 6.7 billion. Certainly, we've got some short-term impacts that we need to be mindful of. Obviously, some strong global forces there. However, when we're looking forward over the next decade, that assumption around 300,000 new homes consented certainly looks achievable. And the capacity constraints will mean that the intent of a number of the residual residential consents we've seen over the last few years will carry over into the short term. So I hope that was of value and some food for thought. Now I just want to talk to you about a new initiative that we're launching all around effective engagement. So we've talked a few times over the last little while around the notion of us putting together a program to actually help the effectiveness of our ability, particularly to influence online. And so we've got a program that we've put together. So I'd like to tell you about it. It's really on the notion of we've got to get used to digital. Excited about how the market can open up, but digital is going to become part of the way that we actually engage and influence, engage with specifiers and influence specification. It's tough to get engagement online. For all of us, it's difficult. But there is an element of scalability. You know, we have the ability every day to be able to talk to people all around the country, different practices. So how we can utilize that to impress an audience of specifiers, to build credibility, which we hopefully leads to trust, information retention, and then on to consideration of future projects. So I'm looking at the notion here of how do we follow some simple guidelines. We can use some templated processes to actually assist in developing our effectiveness of engagement, and also the ability to lock in some time to not only develop our skills, but also to think about developing some content. So we're mindful here, we didn't just want to have information presented to you to be absorbed and then you had to go away. We actually wanted to set some time aside for you to be able to actually work on how you could develop content. So at the end of a program, you are ready to push go and hit the market. Also wanted to make sure that whether you felt that you're doing a good job and just wanted to tweak and improve, or whether you're getting into these types of presentations the first time, that you're going to get lots of value out of this program. So we've got 6 modules, and the outcomes that we're focused on is developing effective skills, specifically to engage architects digitally, online, but also that can translate into the face-to-face opportunities that will grow in the future. Love for us all to be able to use storytelling. So how we can actually present fundamental design guidance and technical insights using storytelling to increase the retention of that information, and also the retention of ourselves in terms of people who can actually help and assist. Just look at some of the fundamentals of building not only short-term but also long-term presentation. You know, delivering 45-minute, 30-minute CPD presentations online is really challenging. So how we can effectively keep our audience with us through through that journey. And finally, thinking about how can we actually scale our opportunities. So we can look at developing a series of presentations and actually want to be able to teach you how you can actually record those, how we can put them online, make them available for architects to watch those, learn from those at any time. As I mentioned, we're developing a presentation register. We'll also be able to host pre-recorded video content. Again, all about short, sharp insights into technical knowledge and expertise, with the hook of encouraging people, architects, to contact you at a future date to help them with a project. It's going to be run by a very experienced presenter, David Waters from APL put me on to, Miriam Chancellor, who has a business called Naked Audience. So Miriam is going to guide us through this program, and I'll be helping facilitate, make sure that there's a very strong architectural lens over the top. Starts on the 3rd of May. We've got 6 weekly sessions. The cost is $5.95 per person. That's our EBOSS client rate. We're going to limit it to a small group. And at this stage, we're running everything online. So we'll have great insights into how to run Zoom and also Teams as part of this. It's be great to do this in person. Hopefully at the end we can get together, but no promises. So we'll be launching this next week. So we'll have a full bio of Miriam and also a breakdown of the program, which will outline the individual models to give you an idea of the structure and what you can expect to get out of it. So I hope to see a few of you engaged in that. I'm looking forward to it. I'll learn a lot as well. And with that in mind, we're going to, we'll just go out again with the boss, eh? So we'll continue with Dancing in the Dark. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. Keep charging in the market. Anything EBOSS can help you with in the future, just let us know. All right.